short review here. Basically saying that the mitzvah of the Eved Ivri, Ame Ivriya, Eved Kanani, and the Bas, these four levels, even they don't exist, the Bas exists, but even they don't exist in Gashmias, they do exist in Ruchnias, and these basically represent the four worlds, or the five levels of the soul, which can be put into the four worlds, because we said the Chaya and the Yechida were both at the level of Atzilus, and the other three worlds connect to the other three levels of the soul. And we said that all these things are basically in every place in the whole Hishtalshalus, that they exist primarily spiritually now, since we don't have them physically, and they're eternal, so clearly their only existence right now is spiritually, and all these five levels exist, i.e. all these four levels, which are really five, and they exist. Since our job is to basically affect all the world with our avoda, then they exist also inside of each one of the kavim of Torah, avoda, and gemurus chasadim. Right? You following me what I'm saying from yesterday?
Not that last part.
In other words, there's just like they exist inside of our soul, they exist inside of the world, they exist inside of the angels, like all these distinctions into levels, which are represented by these four categories. They also exist inside of our avodas Hashem, which is divided itself into three parts. Torah, Avoda, and Gemurus Chassidim. So in each of those three parts, you have this whole level of the Ishtalshalus, of the four worlds.
In Torah, Avoda,
and good deeds, Gemurus Chassadim. So we said basically we have all these inside of us, and we started off with the Eved Kanani, explaining how this is shaykh to our Avoda, and what it is. The Eved Kanani is basically fear of the whip. It's the lowest level of avodas Hashem. Meaning, like just like an Eved Kanani Bagashmias, he's not like particularly excited to be there. He'd rather be doing nothing, but he maintains his posture as a slave because of the whip. And we said sometimes you don't even have to use the whip; just knowing that the whip is there is enough for him to basically behave himself. But he behaves himself in such a way that he's full-time behaving. That he's able to guard himself in thought, speech, and action. In other words, he's able to be perfect like a Beinoni. Just the whole thing is deriving from the state of the whip. But that's like a high level Eved Kanani. That's like a unique high level Eved Kanani. But it goes down from there in levels. And we said that Eved Kanani sometimes the whip is not enough to maintain his perfection, at least not in his thoughts. Maybe it's enough to keep him from speaking and acting out of turn. But his thoughts, which is also one of the garments of the soul, sometimes he'll leave himself having negative thoughts, and that's when a person has negative thoughts intentionally. He's called a sinner at that moment. He's called a rasha, and therefore he goes out of the realm of being a Beinoni. And we said even if it'll get to him in a further level, where he'll even it'll affect even his speech and his action, but he'll do tshuva. And then he'll sort of replenish himself. So that's a lower level, but he's still able to sort of maintain a sense of coming back and making himself whole again. And that's pretty much where we left off. We're going on.
But I think you skipped one. So we have the Beinoni, and we have the lower level, which is if you have sinful speech and deed.
We start with thought, sinful thought, even though your speech and deed is okay.
Oh.
That's level 1 down from a Beinoni. And then, even if you have speech and deed is off, but if you do tshuva over it, then you can repair it. So that's its level 2 down.
Fear of the whip was
Fear. All of this is fear of the whip. In other words, the only reason this person is serving God at all is because of fear of the whip. But the whip has a different effect on him depending on how much fear he actually has of it. If it's really able to keep him in line or not.
But the Russia who sins through thought can also do tshuva.
He could do tshuva also, but again, he's not a Beinoni anymore. None of these guys, once they sort of are shaykh to doing sin, a Beinoni is someone who never sins his whole life, basically. Or once he gets to the level of a Beinoni, he's not shaykh to sinning anymore. Okay, so we'll take it from about 10 lines from the bottom of page 75 here, at the period after the parentheses in the middle of the page. Everyone sees that? Who wants to see it? You want copies? No copies? You gotta leave yeshiva knowing how to learn this stuff.
What's the 74?
75.
Makes you think we're gonna leave the yeshiva.
There you go.
He's making threats, this guy. You I'm not worried about, but you still for sure have to take this.
When I learn this stuff, I'm ready to leave.
Okay, well, we gotta get working. Alright, so anyway, you see where we are, Baruch? 10 lines from the bottom, about in the middle of the page of the period. V'yesh b'china shelamat mizu. See that? 11 lines. After the parentheses. Yesh b'china shelamat mizu. There's a level that's lower than this. Shurak misorer behirhuri tshuva, which means he's aroused with thoughts of tshuva. Aval ein ze poel alav. It doesn't actually affect him. Sheyashuv b'tshuva shlema. It'll actually change his deeds. Right. In other words, the previous guy, he sinned and his thoughts of tshuva made him so he won't sin anymore. Where he could fall basically, but he corrects himself at least at that moment where he was. He puts himself back together again. It doesn't mean he's not relevant to fall again, but the tshuva that he does makes him stop being bad. But this level, his tshuva is not strong. The thoughts of tshuva that he has are not strong enough to actually affect him. And this person is already from the side that the portion of good in his soul is b'miyut etzlo. It's on the side of less than 50%. We're talking before about a guy who's mostly good and a little bad, right? Tzaddik. We're talking about Rasha v'tovlo. All this is in the realm of Rasha v'tovlo, but there's many levels. So the tov in a person, which means his ability for his godly soul to sort of overpower, is stronger than his animal soul. So if his animal soul sneaks in, a little shtus covers him up, he's strong enough to overcome it and fix it. But this guy, his negative part is stronger than his positive part, more prevalent, and therefore even if he'll do tshuva, it's not enough to make him overcome the desires of negativity. Shulchin ein yiras hashevet beruchnis poelis alav. And therefore the spiritual whip, as it is, does not affect him to return in tshuva shlema. Right? He sees the whip on the wall, but it doesn't put him back in line. Which is, it could happen, you know. You're not scared of the whip anymore. You just basically are a wild one. But since he does at least have a portion that's good, even though it's minimal, even though it's a minimal, it's not bottle in the negative inside of him. There's such a thing as a miut hanikar, which means a recognizable minimal, right? If it's so small that it comes like batul b'shishim, it's like irrelevant. It's not there anymore. But this guy he's still holding on, still has a fight in the game. Therefore, at least such a person like this, he has regret. He rebels, mamish. The whip doesn't do anything. He says no, to his mommy and tati. He says, sorry, I'm not listening to you. But at the same time, when he goes away, he feels bad about it. That's at least because he has a remnant of good that's still recognizable. And based on this level, the sages said that the wicked are filled with regret. Because that Jewish guilt, basically, it means something. It's a very deep level of like your last chance of your soul basically trying to speak to you. Because you're not listening basically, but at least you feel bad about it because there's some voice popping out which is not totally nullified, which allows you to say like, I feel bad about that, which is a very good thing if that's what the level you're holding on.
My whole community that I grew up in was exactly at this level.
Yeah. Okay. V'yesh b'china shelamata mizo. And there's chas v'shalom a lower level. And that's that the spiritual whip doesn't affect him at all. In other words, the fact that Hashem is there able to, punish him and like that he should have the fear of God upon him, because you need to have a certain recognition of God in order to have that fear. You have to realize that he's in charge, and if you've fooled yourself into this whole world of atheism or whatever it is, different places that you could go, so your fear of God could disappear, God forbid. And therefore it doesn't make any effect on you, the fact that there's some kind of a threat that Hashem is all powerful, can do bad things to you. Like you sort of fooled yourself into thinking that that's not true. Unfortunately, this guy comes to a level, which many a Baal Tshuva, I guess, who returns to Hashem, unfortunately this is oftentimes what does it, is that what affects him is no longer the spiritual whip, but the actual physical whip. Shahu inyan hayisurim, and that's basically when bad things happen to a person. Then all of a sudden he wakes up, his girlfriend broke up with him, he lost his job, and all of a sudden he's like, that gets his attention. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Why is my life a mess? This already is a physical whip. All the theoretical stuff is not affecting him anymore. And all this person is only affected by actual, what we call yisurim, God forbid, which is like pains. And who needs this, God forbid, is a person who the good in him is so small that it's no longer recognizable. It's basically batul, right? So there's no voices of tshuva that are going to affect him. So he's totally oblivious to like basically doing tshuva on his own, because the good cannot surface to actually have a voice, even a voice of regret. So the only thing that's going to happen is actually whip him. God, of course, whipping him.
I'm sorry. Do we, this concept of Hashem doing what we would say is bad things to us,
Yeah.
that's not things that how we explain that, as opposed to more it's cause and effect. Our actions result in.
It is our actions, but the thing is Hashem is, even the bad thing he's doing to you, it's like a child, so to speak, being whipped by his teacher, by his parent, let's say, which, okay, Hasidim don't hit, but nonetheless throughout the generations they did. And it wasn't considered like these cruel, horrible, wicked people. They were saying like, this is the only way to get the people in line. It's a disciplinary action in order to wake you up and realize like you're out of line. So this Hashem does the same thing. Of course it's caused by our own actions. The kid is getting whipped because he misbehaved. But the point is that usually you don't have to hit the kid. You could just point to the whip, and it's enough. If it's the fact that he knows that there's consequences for his actions, it should be enough. If he has any recognizable good in him at all, it should be enough that he can snap back into it. But if he's gone to such a length that there's no one to talk to, the only thing he's going to hear is his body, his animal soul is going to hear it when you physically cause him pain. And unfortunately, this is what happens when something bad happens to, you can't really look at another person and judge when something happens to another person. When something happens to you and it's bad, it's not for no reason. Hashem's getting your attention for some reason. He's trying to say, change your deeds, fix something.
So are we saying that this person is going to have an experience where the physical whip comes into the picture? Or
Yeah, if he's lucky.
if he's lucky?
Yeah, Hashem could just leave him to, God forbid, rot and not let him do tshuva. But if you hit rock bottom and you like sort of forget God, this is one of the last ways that Hashem can get your attention, basically.
So many of us never knew God in the first place.
Okay, so it's okay. Again, I guess there's different levels of knowing God in the first place. I remember this, when you say that, it reminds me of a story. This guy, I don't know if this guy found this idea, but it spoke to me. When a person is called Tinuk Shenishba, he's kidnapped from birth and raised by non-Jews, so he has a different din in the Shulchan Aruch, that he doesn't get punished for most of the things that he does. Like, for example, if he didn't break Shabbos, a person who breaks Shabbos, 39 times every Shabbos, he should get 39 lashes, or he should get killed for that. This person, all the Shabboses and all the malachas he ever did, he only has to bring one carbon when he finds out that he's Jewish, and it atones for like everything. So the question is, why does he have to even bring one carbon? Like he's completely innocent. What is one carbon doing there? So one of the ways of looking at it is that because he's a Yid, he has a godly soul. He's not completely innocent. There's nothing. You might not have been educated, but to say you never knew who God was is not true, because you intrinsically know who God is. You know right from wrong. You maybe you don't understand naturally what is tefillin and what is a Shabbos, and you were kept from keeping it. But theoretically, a Yid will find his way back home because he's searching for the truth. So there is such a thing as, there's no, you can't just throw your hands up and say there's no For another person, you can and you have to say he's completely innocent. But for yourself, you know that you always knew who God was somewhere in there.
Doesn't the Yisurim itself though, like purify the person?
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. It's like the only way to get this person's attention, basically.
No, I'm saying even if he doesn't even know about Hashem, doesn't matter because the pain itself is going to purify him and make him a better person. If someone goes through intense amount of pain.
But when you say become a better person, are we talking about absolute morality or subjective morality? What does it make? What if he's in the, some kind of the Palestinian state over there? He's going to make him a better person. He's going to go out and kill more people. Because in their mind, that's what it means to be a better person. Better person means you actually improve your deeds according to the truth, right?
When Hashem when causes someone so much pain, they're gonna break.
Okay, so they do tshuva.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even they don't even know about Hashem.
But they're breaking and coming back home is turning to Hashem. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, what do you mean they don't know about Hashem? What are they doing tshuva to?
I'm saying like whatever's blocked up in them isn't like the Asurim like burning out of them because it's like such level of pain that they go through.
I don't know. I think it's only if it wakes them up to be a better person, not just a stam Yisurim.
But isn't that what it's designed to do?
What's that?
Isn't that the point of it?
Okay, if it works. All these other things were also supposed to work. The person's supposed to have natural fear of God, and you're supposed to basically be able to do tshuva from the spiritual whip. Those things didn't work, so he's left with his last result, which is a physical whip. That might also work. In other words, it's not a guarantee, but that's the only thing that is possibly going to that this person could possibly hear at this point in his stage of descent. Alavai, it will work. Not everybody who goes through these crises it comes out on top. You could just. Like Paro, he hardened his heart. Then he got smacked again. He hardened his heart more. And it says the first 5 times Hashem didn't harden his heart. He hardened his own heart, which means he got Yisurim and it made him more wicked. So it's not a guarantee, just like the spiritual whip is not a guarantee. But it's a last resort. And you only use this last resort upon a person who has no good left in him that's recognizable at all. It's in there, but it's completely not recognizable. ולכן מה שפועל עליו הוא רק יראת השם בגשמיאס שהוא עניין הייסורים, וכמו שמצינו במנשה שמצד הייסורים שב אל הוויה בכל ליבו. And that's what we find by Menashe, and I think in the Gemara, I just checked it out a little bit, there's a few other cases there that he was a wicked king that did tshuva because Yisurim came upon him. He was super wicked. He was like a horrible, wicked man, setting up idols and like everything, and for the whole Jewish people. But through Yisurim, it worked. It's something that got to him, and he did a tremendous tshuva. Right. So that's the last resort.
Yeah.
Amnam yesh misha einu misorer, b'tshuva leolam. This is the point. This is what I was hoping we wouldn't get to. That's why I was kind of arguing with you, Baruch. There's a person who doesn't get aroused to tshuva ever. And this is someone that the good in him, now we've got basically this called the Rasha Varalo. All those levels that we just said, there's like some 5 levels there. That's all Rasha V'Tovla. He's wicked, but there's some good in him. Whether it's the majority, whether it's the recognizable minority, or whether it's even batal, but still in there in a way that physical Yisurim will work. But this guy, this is the lowest. It's the good in him has completely disappeared. V'omed b'chinas makif alav milamayla. In other words, what it means is disappeared. It has no more effect on his panimius. It's not inside of him. It's like makif to him, completely beyond his conscious level. Right? And again, we're talking about conscious level. Even the level of like feeling a regret, even the level where beating him up would wake it up and get him out of him. Right? This is a very serious level of like it's completely divorced from him. This is like pure evil, basically. You have chas v'shalom examples of this. Just someone gets like pure evil. There was a yid who was responsible for like basically millions upon millions of Jewish deaths in Russia. There's a whole story about him, and the Rabbi spoke to him, or whatever. It's like you could get just pure evil. You lose all sense of godliness whatsoever. It's basically it's not in his body anymore. It's sort of like he's blocked it completely out of any inner experience. It's still sort of, so to speak, in him in a way where it's completely makif, which means he has no access to it. So you can't say he's not a Jew anymore. but it's not like it's hiding in there in potential, just waiting to come out. It's basically pushed out to a point where it can't be accessed.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
At least I shouldn't say we, I have this idea that there's some potential for other neshamas to kind of attach to us and raise us up and bring us to these higher levels in our lives. So wouldn't the opposite also be true? Someone who's really going down, 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 that some, I don't even want to call it a neshama, but some evil energy has entered into this makom because they made a nice cleave for it, and it's now acting almost even out of the neshama's level.
Yeah.
Could take drugs that happens to him.
Harchek mishachin ra. It says distance yourself from a bad neighbor. In other words, a bad neighbor, someone's going to bring you down the other way. And yeah, just you're right. Like basically, look at it like this. You could choose good or you could choose bad, right? But even when you choose either of them, it's not really you choose. It's not really your choice. You're just like locking in to an energy which is flowing through you. When you choose mitzvahs, we talk about all the time. It's like divine energies flowing through you. You're just opening yourself up to like allowing the goodness of God to lead you. The converse of that is that you're allowing the opposite, and how much level of opposite to the point that you could like never let it in, and you're just like an agent for evil in the world. Like you're like mamash the angel. This guy was like mamash the angel of death. You saw him, you're gonna die. You know, Pas v'shalom. It's like it could be like that. I mean, God forbid, God forbid, God forbid. But this is like basically what he's saying. Like the Eved Kanani, where because his whole experience with God is based on this whip. So it could either be that the whip has its effect on you, or the whip doesn't have any effect on you.
We're still talking about the Eved Kanani?
Yeah, all these are levels of the Eved Kanani. From the best of the Eved Kanani is a Beinani, and the lowest is this Rasha Varalo. That's basically the whole scope. Like basically, so what it comes down to, if you're like paying attention to the Tanya and everything, most people that you know are only ever relevant to the Eved Kanani. That's like where our service lies. What level of an Eved Kanani are you? It's amazing that there's all these other levels. You know, there's this Jewish slave and the woman Jewish slave, and there's the boss. Like all these mamish higher levels of kedusha, none of them are really relevant to the average Jew. I mean, they're relevant in terms of inspiration and knowing about them and so forth. And also, we have levels of them inside of us. And like we said, all these levels exist in every little place. So you have a chaya and yechida. Even inside of your Eved Kanani, there's a chaya and yechida. So it's not completely irrelevant. It just has to be put in proper context. Which itself, by the way, is part of the sort of the Tanya in its own right is like the whip, you know. It's like we talked about this on the Fabrengen, on Tu B'Shvat. It's like it says, "Kol asher yavir tachas shevet ha'asiriya kodesh." Everything that goes under the beam, the tent will be holy, and it's referring to Asiri B'Shvat, right? Shevet ha'asiriya kodesh. Remember this? But the word shevet is the same word as Shvat. So Shevet means a whip here we're talking about. So the 10th of Shvat is like a big whip, you know, which means like the whole Chassidus and Tanya, it's like, what is it there? It's coming there to tell you who you really are and to like sort of get off your high horse, basically. Like a person all of a sudden, before the Tanya, people could sit and learn in Torah all day long, like they thought they were tzaddikim. It says tzaddik in here, it says like righteous, Talmud Chacham, all these things. You come to the Tanya, you realize like, halavai, I'm an Eved Kanani, that's not a complete Rasha all my days. And it just puts you in your place. It like humbles you intrinsically to make you realize like the smallness of what you are, and like, you know, that itself is like a whip. You know, it's like you're shown to sort of be humbled and put in your place just by the first couple pages of Tanya. It really sorts you out pretty good there. Anyway, so right, I mean.
Right, but it could serve as I'm so lucky.
Well, the first thing it says is there is it says not really. I mean, not if you take the advice of it, because the first thing it says is there's a whole conversation of it says al tei rasha beinecha, right? You shouldn't be a rasha in your own eyes, and if you'll be a rasha, meanwhile the whole book is telling you you're a rasha, right? But it says to you, because don't be a rasha in your eyes, because if you'll be a rasha, then you might come to be depressed. Right? So basically it's telling you that it's explaining to you your sort of status. It's not allowing you, it's not like the first thing it says before it tells you anything about these levels. It's not allowing you to like allow this information. It's saying if you're going to be depressed from this information, you're like right away not understanding what I'm trying to tell you. that the idea is it's a humbling experience of knowing where you stand. You can't really fix yourself if you think that you're somebody completely different than you actually are. It's like you're not playing with like a good deck. You're being fooled before you start. You'll never get anywhere. So it's just a humbling experience of the truth of it. Then you can start to grow and get good. It's on the contrary, taken properly, it's extremely rewarding and fulfilling. A person when you go to like a piano lessons, and you come in there and you just think you're like Mozart all of a sudden, and you don't, and someone shows you don't even know how to read music or hear a difference between one chord and another one. If you're like a student who's looking to grow, you're very happy to hear this because you're like, okay, now we're talking. Like, so what do I do next? And you can start to build yourself up from a healthy place.
Or a doctor. You want a doctor to give you an accurate diagnosis. You don't want him to just like say everything's fine when it's not. Right.
Okay, 100%. So anyway, the point here is that someone who, God forbid, is his bechinas atov nistalik mikirvo. It's completely removed. V'omed bechinas makif alav milamayla, and it's standing only from a distant sort of makif place. Shezeo sha'am razal. Where do we see this? Akol be'asara shchinta sharia. It says that on all time, anytime you have 10 Jews, the Shekhinah dwells. It doesn't even matter if they're like the most wicked people. It says it doesn't even matter if they're just sitting there, standing there, talking Devarim B'Teilim. Just the fact that you're a Jew and you become part of a group of 10 other Jews, you get the Shekhinah to dwell there. But it doesn't say the Shekhinah comes into you and can be experienced. It like sort of dwells in a makif way, because even this wicked person, he still has the good. It's just completely removed from his body, but it still like surrounds him. So when he goes somewhere, he participates in the other 9 Jews, and he does, make a minyan, as it were.
So they should have jail cells of 10.
Yidden.
Yeah,
God forbid we should have any Jews in jail. This is V'hine kol prati ha-madregos de rasha v'tovlo. The madrega yoser nailis. So he said all these details that we just said of the rasha v'tovlo, the wicked who still has good in him. The madrega yoser nailis, until the highest level. V'gam b'chinas beinani, and even the higher level than that, he's actually a beinani. Shu al derech ma shekasuv Rabbi Gamliel. Ein TV, I think TV. Avdi kashar kol avadim kasher haya. This is what we said before. The Rabbi Gamliel said about his slave that he was like kosher. He was a perfect Evid Kanani. He was a Beinani. To all the levels, even to that level, he nekol zen nichlal b'chinas Evid Kanani. Still, no matter how high you're going to go in this thing, it's all still called an Evid Kanani. And the reason is because his service is not coming from himself. Remember what we described before. He'd rather be left alone. The whole thing he's doing is he's putting something on him, and you got to hand it to all these levels. The fact they're doing anything is something, because they'd rather be doing nothing. It's not like in their nature to just all of a sudden like serve Hashem. They're busy doing something else, enjoying the physical world. You only live once. Smoke them while you got them. That's their attitude, and the fact they're going to do anything is like a yoke that they're putting on themselves.
Yeah, at least they're slaves.
Pretty much.
Some people are not even slaves, I guess.
Well, it gets pretty low here, but ki'im mitzad yiras hashevet bilvad. So it's not coming from themselves. They're not deriving this from their own experience and pleasure. It's coming from the fear of sin, of the whip, coming from an outside force. Zeu b'chinas nefesh da'asiyah, and on this is Evid Kanani, and in other terms, it's called the nefesh level, the lowest level, or the world of asiyah. Right? Step 1 on the 4-step ladder. Which means, and this is like very clear what he's saying here, that how does the person get to such a level? What does it mean? Like we discussed this earlier, that what invests itself from the godly soul into the animal soul, it's not the level of Chabad of the godly soul. It's not the level of Chagas, the emotions of the godly soul. Nihi bilvad. It's only the Netzach Hod Yesod. So basically, you have 3 segments of the tree of life: Chabad, Chagas, Nihi. Right? Like basically, Chabad is the intellect. Chagas is the emotions, like burning, thriving emotion. And Nihi, Netzach Hod Yesod, is like the Netzach means like you're going to be victorious. Right? What does it mean, victorious? It means like I'm going to overcome the fact that I don't want to do it and do it anyway. The lower 3 spheres in general is mean, why they're also emotional because they're right. But the idea is that the emotion there is like a forced emotion. You can be in love with someone, but then when it actually comes to doing a good deed for them, you're not necessarily running across the room with this passionate love. It's like you'd rather sit there, but something forces you to do the good deed because you know in your heart you love them and you're going to just do it. But it's not like you're doing it mamish from a state of love. And that's this level which is like, it's the emotions as they sort of come out of their place in the heart, and they just sort of do it by force. This is the level called the Nihi, Netzach Hod Yesod. And that, it's possible, for an Eved Kanani, that's the only part of his godly soul that actually comes into his Nefesh HaBahamis. This is an interesting thing. So we already know that not your whole soul is in your body. But we thought at least all the parts of my soul are in my body. In other words, like I have Chabad, Chagas, Nehim. No. You might just have of your godly soul just the most extended, like not your emotional level, but like that feeling of, okay, I'll do it because somewhere in my heart I know I want to, that just like forced action, that might be the entirety of the godly soul that's in your body, and probably is.
I'm sorry, where? This is in the lower?
This is Nihi, Netzach Hod Yesod, that the lowest part of your godly soul, that's the only part that comes into the body of a Beinani or a Rasha V'Tov, whatever.
Can I share an experience?
Yeah, sure.
Coming back to Yiddishkeit, is a Jewish renewal, a Jewish retreat center, and he did a Hasidic dance. So it was the first time I ever did it, going around, all of us around each other.
Right.
And all of a sudden I had this pulsation in my yesod. It was like this, and I started crying. There was this revelation of my soul there.
Wow. Yeah.
You said, so it's only Nihi possible. I said, so where are the other two?
They're makif. They're there. They're hanging out with themselves. You don't experience them. You don't have like a love of Hashem. And maybe something like this, like we said, there's like hirhuri tshuva. Even this level of like the Nihi, if that Nihi was inside of it, which is inside of us, it wants to be serving Hashem at least by rote. In other words, not necessarily. It's not a passionate love of Hashem necessarily, but it definitely wants to do every single mitzvah without fail. It wants to be an Eved Kanani. It wants to be a Beinani. So it's giving you hirhurei tshuva into your nefesh habahamis. So that experience that you had doesn't mean you fell in love with Hashem all of a sudden. It could mean that suddenly the level of Nihi in your soul screaming to you, "Hey, buddy, like you like this? Let's do it 24/7 the rest of your life." And so it's not, we have these spiritual experiences. We just have to also, again, with like the Tanya thing, we have to be reasonable with ourselves. Where from my soul is this actually coming? Just having any expression from the godly soul, Baruch Hashem, Hallelujah, is an amazing experience. And it probably feels awesome. But what he's saying here is that Rov Ben Adam, most people, their only part of their soul that is even in their body to work with is this Nihi. Just like the action part of the soul. It's that part which is relevant to do, like in your own self. What is it? You have your intellect, you have your emotions, and you have your deed. Like, okay, I'll just do it, even though I'm not necessarily feeling it. Like, I'll do a favor for a friend, even though, because I know I love this friend, but I'm not doing it with a simcha and so forth. It's just I'm getting the job done. Chesed Gevurah Tiferes. So it's like the emotional, when you're really like on fire emotionally, you're feeling love, you're feeling fear.
Is this a high level though, because you're not motivated by any positive feelings or anything?
It is a high level. Yeah, there's a sort of good trade-off that we're going to get to. I think you said it yesterday, maybe. Yeah, you were saying yesterday that in the lowest level where you're just serving. You said it's like l'shem shamayim. Remember that?
Okay.
Because you're not doing it for yourself, so it's like even though it's like we're sort of like looking at our lowliness, which we definitely are. But there's something very, very great, as we're going to see, that comes out of specifically having only this level of your soul in your body. But nonetheless, we should realize what it is. That it's only shayach to poel. It's just the doer, not the feeler and the knower inside of your soul. Ve'inyan ze gufa hu b'derech kafiyah. And this thing, even that you have the part of your soul which is relevant to doing, that itself is only in a way of kafiyah. It's only in a way of forcing yourself to do. In other words, you can do it with like an alacrity, but this is the level of your soul which is like forcing yourself to do it. You can relate to this on a level of like sometimes you force yourself to do the right thing. So that's like you would say a very low part of yourself. That's the only part of your soul that's in your body. Just the part that is ready to force itself to do the right thing. Shezeu inyan asiya. That's why it's called the world of asiya. It means the world of doing. V'inyan b'chinazu ba'avodas hatefila. Okay, so suddenly he jumps into avodas hatefila. But he says, where do we see this in like our daily lives, so to speak, in our avoda, in davening? Hu moda ani hodu lavaya ad baruch she'amar. So he's basically at the end of all these like sections, he's going to sort of place it on the ladder of tefillah, just to give us a little bit more of a knowledge of what's going on here. So he says, this lowest level of your soul is what happens from when you start off in the morning. You say moda ani till when you get to the beginning of prayer, hodu la Hashem Kiruv Shemo, all the way up until and not including Baruch She'amar. This is like our day of davening up until there, because it's all about Hodah. Hodah means thanksgiving, recognition, but not knowing. There's a difference between like bracha and Hodah. That's why when it says Baruch She'amar, that's already the beginning of the level of called bracha a little bit. Bracha is when you can bring something down and internalize it. When you're not at a level of internalizing, you just sort of know and it's affirmed by you, even though you don't really get it, you're not really feeling it, you're not really knowing it, but you're not going to veer left or right because you recognize that that's the truth. That's the level of asiya in the nefesh. That's the level of hodah. And therefore we start off our day, we haven't like developed yet, we're still sort of like going through the day and climbing up the ladder. So everything up until the beginning of prayer, we say the words actually, Moda ani lefanecha, Hodu Lashem Kiruv Shemo. We use this word Hodah as a symbol.
Is Ashrei before or
after? That's what he says now. Ubresuki de Zimra, hu in his bonus v'sipar shivcho shel makom. When you get to Ashrei, like you're saying, Pesuki de Zimra, the verses of praise, which starts with Baruch She'amar and goes till Yishtabach. This is the meditation and basically saying Hashem's praise. So that's already sort of getting into a state of meditation. Right? When you get to Baruch She'amar, you start, what are all the ashreis about? It's basically like praising Hashem for His beautiful world and how wonderful everything is, and like, you know, it's basically going through and describing the greatness of Hashem in His world. So that's already the second stage. That's not Hodu. Because that's already being misbonen and trying to figure out and understand and meditate on the greatness of God. We're just dealing with the level of recognizing there is a God.
So this level is Chesed Gemara Tiferes in the 3 levels?
Which level? Like the one we're primarily talking about right now?
Praise, starting with Baruch She'amar.
Oh yeah, that would be going up a level to Chagas, Chesed Gemara Tiferes. But we're not really going there yet. We're just using it right now as like a negation. That's called meditation. And what we're doing at this level is just acknowledgement. Shezeu b'chinas Nihi. Before you get the ability to be misbonen, to meditate on Hashem, you're just showing up for prayer, basically. You're just like getting out of bed. You're like, okay, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do right now. And basically what he's saying is that's the level of the soul that goes into the body of an Eved Kanani. Bichlal. He's like, even though you'll start meditating and you're going to start going through all the levels of prayer, it's all levels within the Nihi. In other words, let's say we're going to go to Baruch She'amar in a second, we're going to have Chagas, Chesed Gemara Tiferes. Don't mistake that with the real Chagas. It's just the Chagas of Nihi, right? The real Chagas is like a level way beyond Nihi, right? Nihi is Netzach Chod Yesod. But we're saying that the only part of our soul which is in our body is the Nihi. So the fact that we're going to go from a state of acknowledgement to a state of meditation and arousing love and fear, it's not like we're going out of the Nihi into the Chagas, because that means we would like access like a whole brand new soul, which is Bechlal not in our body. It means that within the realm of Nihi, there's Nihi of Nihi, and then there's Chagas of Nihi, and there's Chabad of Nihi. It's all in the realm of, the whole thing is just acknowledgement and basically a level of like doing it out of being told. And that's the level of the Eved Kanani. He never gets to a pure love of Hashem. He's always just doing it because there's a whip there. So even if he'll start doing different types of avoda, more connected with the heart and the mind, it's all still because there's just a whip there. It's not really coming from him. He hasn't accessed his true sense of self, which would be the Chagas and the Chabad. Follow?
Good thing we're Chabad.
Huh? That's right. The Chabad of the Nihi. Now we can properly place ourselves. Gimel. Unless, of course, you're an Eved Ivri. Ach, b'chinas Eved Ivri, hu shavodaso lahavaya ein b'derech hoda v'kafiyah bilvad, kamo Eved Kanani. This is a person that his service is not just in a way of acknowledging the truth, even though he doesn't experience it, and forcing himself kafiyah to do it, even though he'd rather be somewhere else, like the Eved Kanani. But Eved Ivri Kasiv, because regarding the Eved Ivri, the Jewish slave, it says, Lo savod bo avodos Eved. It says you don't enslave him with the service of a slave. You have to treat him differently than Eved Kanani. Lo tirda bo befarech. You cannot come down on him with back-breaking labor. Shezeu avodas derech kafiyah. What does it mean, back-breaking labor? That means like forcing a person to do something against his will. So when it comes to an Eved Ivri, we have a beferush pasuk that says you can't treat him like an Eved Kanani. So completely different. I mean, it says in the rules of the Rambam that even the holy Yidden, our holy family of Jews, even the Eved Kanani, they would always treat with utmost respect. But al pi halacha, you could be punished for treating an Eved Ivri in this way, and you wouldn't be punished al pi halacha for treating an Eved Kanani in this way. It's just that derech eretz, we're Jews, we don't act like that. But in other words, it's not forbidden. But it is forbidden to treat a Jewish slave like that. And what does it mean, avodas parach? It's not as bad as you think. It's just like basically, here, just dig this hole till I get back. Something like that's called like giving a person a job which like does not have a clear end and like sort of a satisfying conclusion. It's already called back-breaking labor, let alone disrespectful treatment. V'hainu shavodas Eved Ivri einu b'derech hoda v'kafiyah bilvad, which, and all that comes to mean is that his service is not just for a way of acknowledging and forcefulness. Eli yesh lo gam hergish halev, right? He actually feels it. This Yid, he has a whole other level of his soul that he's attached to, that's inside of him. He mamish feels the love of his godly soul. It's like he's in love with Hashem. Just like a person could be in love with their wife, or you could be in love with a chocolate cake, or you could be in love with a beautiful picture, which is basically animalistic love, and it's human sort of like behavior love. It's not godly love. This person is mamish in love with the Eibishter. He thinks about Hashem, and he's like, his heart starts to beat, and he's just like, I love this God. This is already like an Eved Ivri. A Beinoni does not necessarily have this experience all the time. A Beinoni, it says he can get to having that experience. No. We're now going into like a realm of some kind of a tzaddik. Up till now, it was all the Beinoni. The Beinoni, which is the Eved Kanani, that's sort of like his end. He's all doing it because he'd rather be somewhere else, but he's doing it anyway. That's the Beinoni, right? The Beinoni has he has taivas for the physical world. He just doesn't listen to them ever. This guy, his taiva is for elokus. He gets up in the morning, most people can't wait for that morning coffee. He can't wait for mamish moda'ani, and he's like living with everything. He's just like has a taiva for elokus. And a fear for everything which is not elokus. Like he's in love with Hashem. Nevertheless, it does not mean that by him there's something called a change of mahus. Okay, and mahus means your very essence. So even though he has a love, he does not have what's called this love does not affect upon him an actual change of his essence. What does that mean? You, Vanze, will understand this, mimasha anu roim, from this that we see, ba'avodas Eved Ivri b'gashmius, how an actual Jewish slave works physically, which is a beautiful thing. You can actually see like the differences in these people's physical lives. What does he do, this Eved Ivri? Shemevi kol hatzitzarchos habayis michutz lifnim. He brings all the needs for the house from outside to inside. He basically works in the fields. So he brings in the grain, he brings in the crops, he brings in the harvest of the trees and the fruits. In other words, everything that has to be brought in from the fields, he brings it into the house. Because those are things that you need a slave for. It's not, as a master, he obviously is fit to have slaves. That's the first job you give them, take care of like the dirty work, the hard work. That's obviously what the Jewish slave is going to be doing, is working in the field. It's not fit for the master. Or b'nei beso, right? Or afilu ama ivriya. It's certainly not fit for the master's children, and it's not even fit for the woman slave. That's not woman's work. So that's his job. And the Rebbe sort of pinpointed him. That's pretty much what he's going to be doing. He's been doing work in the fields, the hard work. Therefore, that's left to the Jewish slave. That's his job. But even after this Jewish slave brings all the needs of the house inside the house, it's still not fit to eat. Right? There's still something missing from his avoda. All that he does, you can't eat the crop as it comes in. In order to make it fit for eating, you have to cook it, you have to roast it, you have to do something with it, you have to make it edible. Otherwise it's like animal food. And who does the cooking and the baking? The woman slave. Huh? So you see that there's this, she has a completely different type of access to the person than does the man slave. We're going to run out of time. But, okay, we'll just excite ourselves. What's the difference? Okay. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. B'ezrat Hashem. You want me to hold on to that for you, or you hold it?